Hi, welcome to the channel. Though if you're new here, I am Jen and I'm delighted to meet you. Either way, I'm so happy for you to join me and I'm just really excited about what's about to go down. The reason why is I love beef jerky, specifically homemade beef jerky made out of brisket. That is what I love. I like a little fat on it. I know that's not how it's supposed to be. It goes rancid too quickly, blah, 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 but I love it, okay? You're not gonna change me. But the reason it's an extra special day today is I got a new dehydrator. I've been on the hunt for one with stainless steel racks instead of plastic. So I finally got one. I'm going to show you all about that. And I got like a particular cut of brisket when I ordered half a cow recently. So that's going to work really perfectly with my meat cutter to make this jerky. And I'm currently basically meal prepping all of my food each week. So jerky is actually going to be one of my meals for the next week. So I'm really excited about all that. I want you to get to see every bit of it. And also, just to kind of keep things interesting while we're going, I just want to share a little bit of kind of my story, how I ended up going carnivore in the first place, how it went, why I stopped for a little bit, how I've basically come back, and what's working for me now. So if you're totally new here, this will all be new information. If you've been around for a while, this might help to kind of summarize some things. Regardless of if you're a new friend or an old friend, I cannot wait to do this with you and just to see how everything goes in this new dehydrator. Here's a little look-see at the dehydrator. It's from London Sunshine, which is a brand that I already know and love from a different product. And then you can see the trays are stainless steel. Now, I know that means they're going to be a pain in the butt to clean, but for this, I'm willing to do it. And then here's my meat cutter. I just got this from Amazon. It's not super fancy. It was $100 or so. Does the trick. And then here's my brisket. So this is specifically a beef brisket flat. This is just part of a whole brisket, but it's a part that's super easy for cutting and turning into jerky. You can see there's quite a bit of fat on the top and then a lot of fat on the bottom. I know it's kind of gross with the blood, but that won't be there once we dehydrate it. Anyway, this is what I like. Not everyone is gonna like their jerky as fatty as me, but for me, the fattier the better. All right, I'm gonna share a behind the scenes fun fact. For most of the rest of this video while I'm doing the work and you can see my hands cutting, putting it in the dehydrator, all that, I'm gonna be wearing this handy dandy thing. It's a mount that you put literally around your neck and then the foam goes on here so that I can be hands-free. I know it's so nerdy, okay? But I've needed something like this forever and feel like I finally got something that fits the bill. Okay, I've got my little mount on my neck and we're all ready to go. Though I don't know just how well everything's gonna show up because it's like right by my head. Anyway, we'll just do our best here. So I think I'm gonna have to cut this into some smaller pieces that are a little more workable with the cutter. Let me get that going a little bit here. It's always a little confusing to me, the direction to cut it, because the grain goes this way at this angle. But I don't wanna cut my meat. Well, I guess maybe I should. No, I'm not going to. It's just gonna be complicated for getting the pieces through the slicer. So I think I'm gonna cut it this way, and then I'm gonna put it through the slicer this way. That might be wrong. You know, sometimes I make choices that are probably not the best when it comes to cooking and prepping and stuff. I'm not a professional chef. I'm nothing like that, but I get by. And this is just slightly frozen to make it a little bit easier to handle with the meat cutter. Okay, so now when I get going here, we're gonna be going this way with the slicer. Now, you're not supposed to push this with your bare hands. That's a safety problem. But I don't find it that easy to do it with this plastic safety thing. As it gets really close and I feel like I'm at risk for cutting myself, maybe I'll use this. I also have this like stainless steel glove that sometimes I'll wear that just to protect my hand. I don't have it here at Matt's house, so I'm not gonna use it today. Anyway, here we go. Okay, now I'll use this. We're getting a little meat stuck here, so let me get that out while the blade is off, and then we'll kind of start over here. You can see this works really well, but there are some inconsistencies sometimes that I just kind of have to work around. It's really hard when there's just a tiny bit left, but we'll see if we can make some good use of this last bit. Okay, this last piece is too thin to go through again, but it's a little thicker than the rest, but that's okay. I think we can make it work. So you can see, even though it's not perfect, what you end up with is pretty dang good. Let me tell you, any issues with it probably are user error. But I don't know. I don't care to fine-tune my technique. I think it's fine. Although if you have any advice just based on what you're seeing, then I'm open to suggestions. But that was half of our brisket flap. I'm gonna get this situated here, and then we'll cut our second half. This is my new hands-free phone mount. See, there's a tiny bit of waste here, but not much at all. Definitely nothing compared to when I used to cut this by hand with a knife. Okay, we've got her all cut up. Yay! So now I'm just gonna flatten this all out, put it on some different cutting boards, and salt it up. Gosh darn it. I just laid all this out, and then I realized my goal is actually to weigh all this raw meat so I know exactly how many ounces of brisket this is, because I'm going to be using it for my meal prep later in the week. And so I want to, let's say it's 100 ounces of raw brisket. It's not, but let's pretend it is for the sake of math. And then I dehydrate it, and it's only 50 ounces. So I know then when I'm eating it, I need to basically record in my app the amount of the weight of it when it was raw, because it's going to be losing moisture in the dehydrator, but that's not going to help. That's not going to change the macros. So if that makes sense, I'm not explaining this very well, but I want to capture the raw weight, not the cooked weight. So I need to undo all my work, throw this on the food scale, and then start over. So FYI, I stop a lot and wash my hands like a million times a day when I'm prepping food. I'm not trying to spread germs all over the kitchen. I'm gonna see if I can squish all of this meat on this tiny tray that came with my meat cutter and get it weighed there so I can still see the screen. I want it in ounces. There we go. Okay, basically 59.5 ounces. Good to know. Now I'll start over laying it out nice and flat. While I'm laying this out, let me explain myself a little more. So when I take the jerky out of the dehydrator and I split it into daily portions, let's say each day's portion has 8 ounces of brisket. Well, if the total weight of my brisket out of the dehydrator is only 25 ounces and what we started with was basically 50, then I know that I need to double the weight of the dried brisket when I track it in my calorie app. I hope that makes sense, because if I track the dried weight, I'm basically totally messing up my calories and macros for the day because I'm deducting the weight of the water, which didn't have much nutrition in it. So with most foods, I don't get too uptight about it. I do try to capture the raw weight of cooked meat, but it's not usually a drastic difference between raw and cooked weight. But with jerky, it's a very drastic difference. So in this case, I think it's pretty important. Okay, so we're all laid out. Now I'm going to season it. You'll be so shocked at what I'm seasoning it with. That's mostly sarcasm if you've watched any of my other cooking videos. The only seasoning I ever add to my jerky is salt, specifically Redmond real salt, which is, in my opinion, the most delicious salt in the world. Now, if anybody sold good, soft beef jerky with just salt, I would buy the heck out of that. But nobody does. There are some like drier, crispier versions that are just meat and salt, but that's not quite jerky to me, so I just make my own. I would recommend under-salting if you're going to under or over salt, because you can always add some salt at the end. A couple times I have added too much salt, and I mean, it was still good, I still liked it, but it does sort of take away from it a little bit, in my opinion. Now I'm gonna try something new today that I've never done, but I got this flaky sea salt, and I just wanna try a little bit on there because I think the little bit of crunchy flakiness will be a nice touch. So you see just a tiny, tiny bit, and I guess I don't even know if this is going to basically absorb during the dehydrating process. If so, then it takes away the whole purpose of getting the crunch. If that's what happens, the next time I'll add this at the end. Getting salt all over the floor, so clearly I will be sweeping later. Okay, I think that'll be enough salt for now, and then if it needs more later, that's an easy add. And now I just gotta get my trays ready. I hope, 1, 2, 3, 6 trays, I hope there will be enough room for all this jerky, but I can't say for sure. We'll just have to see. So 50 ounces-ish, so this is about 4 pounds of beef, just to give you an idea of how much can fit in the dehydrator at full capacity. Wait, that's not right. I was thinking 12 ounces per pound, but it's 16. So this is just a little over 3 pounds of meat. I don't want it to overlap at all, but I want to get this as crowded as I can so I can cook as much of this meat as I possibly can. If there's a tiny piece somewhere, here we go. A little tiny piece. Okay, rack 1. I'll tell you what, I really like this new phone mount. It goes everywhere I go. I don't have to move anything or touch anything or start and stop anything. This is not a promo for it. I guess maybe I'll link it in the caption in case you care to know, but it wasn't something I was necessarily intending to promote. Now, the fat does drip down a little bit. I've learned that from previous times making this jerky. So I put a little plastic tray in the bottom just to catch dripping so it's easier to clean out the whole dehydrator. Okay, so this is only our second tray. I think we're gonna be just fine on space, but I'm still trying to kind of creatively space this out on here. Gosh, I just love jerky so much. Now, it has been a little bit of a dangerous food for me in the past because it's something I can overeat so easily. I could easily eat this whole 3.5 or whatever pounds of beef in one day. 100% I could have done it before. Once I start eating it, I just almost can't stop. It's so good. But now that I've been meal prepping all of my meals, it's only been not even a month, but I've just been able to demonstrate a lot more control around food. And so I'm not gonna have any of this. I'm not even gonna take a one bite on camera for you because I'm gonna portion out exactly how much we end up with into however many days worth of meals that needs to be, and then I'm only going to eat that much. I mean, I really need to kind of be black and white with it like that. Otherwise, this is not something I can just have lying around. Now that I know I'm not in danger of running out of room, I will just kind of leave a little more space in there. My old dehydrator was Excalibur is the brand. The trays are plastic. It was 9 trays and they were a little bit bigger than this. But I really found it to be too big because I never used all those trays. I mean, I would maybe use 3 to 4. So honestly, this is probably about the perfect size for me. This is the most I ever make at once as far as jerky goes. And it looks like my flake salt, I don't know, it maybe has kind of dissolved in a little bit because I don't really see a lot of it on there anymore. So maybe I'll sprinkle on a little at the end. Oh, hi, Lucy. She thinks this is for her because she eats raw meat all the time. But no, sorry. Okay, there we go. Now, in the past, when I've made jerky, it's taken about 6 hours. So I'm going to set the timer for 6 hours, but we'll see if I need to add or subtract any time. So I'm going to set the temperature at 158, which is already there, and then the time for 6 hours. And then I'll just start it. You can see it's pretty quiet. I don't know if you can even hear it because I'm using a microphone that sort of cancels out the background noise, so you probably can't. But it's like a very light blowing is all. Well, I promised a story, kind of the synopsis of my time as a carnivore while prepping all the things for the jerky, but it turns out that was way too complicated. It was noisy and I was distracted. And so now that everything's in the dehydrator and it's sort of set it and forget it, now I'll give that recap. Now it's become a bit of a complicated story now with years of twists and turns. I initially started the carnivore diet for the very first time when I heard about it for the very first time in December of 2020. So prior to that, I had just the worst year of my life health-wise. Now I've had psoriasis since I was 7 years old, and it's sort of waxed and waned over the years, but into my 20s and especially 30s, it was just getting worse and worse, but it was still kind of coming and going, sometimes a little better, sometimes a little bit worse. And for probably 5 to 10 years, from mid-20s to mid-30s, my dermatologist was encouraging me to try immunosuppression injections, but I was not ready to do that. I was scared of it. I thought, this is just cosmetic. I'm not going to suppress my immune system for my skin. Around, gosh, I don't even know the years anymore because it's been so long, but I want to say probably around age 35 probably, which I'm 39 now, going to be 40 really soon. Was when I finally agreed to go on an immunosuppressant. So for maybe 6 months, my skin was completely clear. Everything seemed perfect, except 1 month after starting an immunosuppressant, I had the worst sore throat of my life. Now, I did not connect the immunosuppressant and the sore throat. I thought they were completely separate. And I went to the doctor, they tested me, said everything was fine. I go another 6 months, my skin's still clear. This is now 6 months on the drugs, almost 6 months of having a sore throat. And then I got really, really sick with a throat infection. I went to the doctor again. At that point, they said it was strep throat. Oh my gosh, it's hard to explain exactly how bad this got, but for a week to 10 days, I was homesick from work with this terrible throat infection, in and out of the doctor every couple days, sometimes different doctors because they were sending me to like higher and higher specialists because the drugs they were giving me weren't helping. And then at some point I developed a small little rash on my body, but within a few days it was covering my entire body. It was so uncomfortable and I had no idea what was wrong with me. I was at this point thinking this rash may be from all these drugs they're giving me. You know, I at least thought that. But I thought I was gonna die. I'm not kidding you. I was writing emails to my mom with my passwords for my financial stuff and all of that kind of stuff. I guess I would still have these in my email drafts, so I'll have to go back and see kind of what was going through my mind. But I truly thought this is going to kill me because it was getting worse and worse every single day. I was also getting bloody noses. I didn't know if that was related. The doctors were worried. I mean, it was just bad, okay? And I'm not the kind of person who's like in and out of the emergency department all the time or freaking out about my health stuff. I'm not. But for this week or so, I probably looked like that kind of person because I was constantly calling the doctor. They'd send me to the ED to get some tests or whatever. They thought I had Rocky Mountain spotted fever at some point, which is from a tick-borne illness. And I had had a patient like a year prior with Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and he'd lost all his fingers and toes. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to me? So that's long-winded, but I just want you to know it was so bad, okay? I was covered. Well, ultimately, they did a skin biopsy, and it turns out it was leukocytoclastic vasculitis, okay? It's a big word, but basically it was a type of vasculitis. And I saw multiple specialists over the next couple months. No one could tell me what caused it exactly, because it could have been the severity of the strep throat. It could have been my autoimmune condition. It could have been a reaction to the drugs. So anyway, to summarize, it was horrible. At this point in the year of 2020, it was around May was when I was really sick, and then kind of June I was getting better. This was also when COVID first started, of course, and I work in healthcare, so it was just like an extremely stressful time for me. And by midsummer, my skin was a whole lot better. I basically felt like I had been through this weird fluke thing. I still wasn't necessarily connecting the dots with the medicine and my sickness, although I was thinking like one of the causes of this rash could have been my medicine, I guess, or it could have been related in that I got this severe strep throat and it probably wouldn't have been so severe without the drugs, but it's like all conjecture, we still don't know really. But I was starting to notice that what I would eat would affect my skin. My vasculitis mostly went away, but especially when I drink alcohol or ingest sugar, I would start to get little flare-ups of it again, and I'd freak out because I did not want to get that again, and I would stop eating those things, and I'd try to be really healthy, and it would kind of stabilize, and then it would just keep happening. Well, around probably November of 2020, so a few months later, then I started getting psoriasis again. And I was still on my medication for my psoriasis that had, at that point, I was clear of psoriasis for like a year. But it was starting to come back little by little. But it was really, really itchy and way more uncomfortable than it ever had been in my life before when I had psoriasis. And it was just, it looked different too. It almost kind of looked like a mixture of my previous psoriasis with vasculitis. It was just terrible. Okay, so now I'm gonna have my editor put in some photos of that time when my psoriasis was really, really bad. Now, most of the worst areas were in very sensitive parts of my body that would typically be covered by undergarments, right? Like my breasts, my bottom. So it's difficult to show photos of that without showing practically nude photos, but know that I am not showing you the full extent because that would not be appropriate, okay? So some people will comment how I'm being inappropriate sharing these photos, but it's like you can't capture it without that, and also believe me, it could be way worse, okay? And I'm gonna keep a little bit of my body secret for now, okay? But it was horrible. And I had just been through that, what I thought was like a near-death experience a few months ago. I was just recovering, and now I'm just worst psoriasis ever. I'm still on medication. I'm just like at my very wit's end. Okay, so that was November, December-ish of 2020. I finally went to see a naturopath to say, hey, what the heck is going on with me? The doctors can't help me. They're just prescribing medicines. Do you have anything else that I can do? And they ran a million tests. They tested my stool, my urine, my blood, everything. And they honestly didn't find a lot. Not a lot came back. They gave me a bunch of supplements. I took them. I wouldn't say anything drastically changed, but at least I had some hope that there was maybe something that could be done. But the best thing that ever happened to me, one of the best things that's ever happened to me in my entire life, was that the naturopath recommended that I have a meeting with his nutritionist that he had on staff, and she told me about the carnivore diet. Okay, so my very first time ever hearing about it was December of 2020, when I just had that horrible vasculitis situation, and then the worst psoriasis flare of my life. And I was so incredibly uncomfortable. I could barely move. I couldn't sleep. Just the sheets touching my skin was like horrifyingly painful and itchy and burning and obviously horrible. So I hope I'm capturing that well and that you really understand how bad it was. But so she told me about it. I went home that evening and I learned about Michaela Peterson, and I heard about Kelly Hogan. And just their stories were so impactful to me. Kelly, she lost weight, but she showed me that you could be a carnivore for a long time, and you could have a family, and you could even be married to someone who's not carnivore, and just that made it very relatable to me. So that was so helpful. And then Michaela Peterson's story was obviously impactful because she also had an autoimmune condition, and changing her diet helped her. Now, I had seen a little bit that my diet did affect my skin, specifically sugar and alcohol, and so that kind of helped me to buy in. Gosh, I meant to make this a short summary, but it's turning into a very long story. Please feel free to fast forward if needed. If you just want to know what happens with jerky, fast forward. But anyway, so I did carnivore for super hard for 2, 3, 4 months probably, and my skin got so much better. Okay, it was significantly better within just a couple of months. But keep in mind, I was still on my medications at that point, all my immunosuppressants. It's hard to separate like what helped me. Did I need the carnivore diet to get over the hump and then the medicine was helping? I don't know. So I don't know how to exactly translate the story to people who are not on medications, or, it's difficult, but this is how it went for me. So within about 6 months, my skin was clear, but I wasn't 100% carnivore anymore. Like once my skin got clear, I was like, okay, I guess I can go back to eating normal. And I also kind of started binging, which I have been a binge eater since I was 15 years old. This is a whole nother video. In fact, I have a bunch of videos on binge eating, so you're welcome to go back and look at those. But it's like, I never really bought into carnivore. I saw it was helping me, but I didn't think it would need to be something I'd do forever. So then when I quit, then my binging started to return, but my skin was still kind of okay. It's like, again, once I got over the hump, it was okay-ish. So I wasn't getting that immediate reinforcement, that immediate punishment to kind of stay on track. So basically from mid 2021 till the end of 2021, I would say I was not carnivore. This was way before I ever had a social media presence talking about carnivore. Okay, so anything you've ever seen me post was beyond this point. And then I went through a breakup that was very difficult. And anyway, fast forward to around February of 2022, okay? That is when I think I started my Instagram in maybe March. But anyway, early 2022, February 9th to be exact, is when I was like, okay, I actually want to be a carnivore. I mean, my skin is clear, yes. I'm still on medication, yes, for my psoriasis, but I felt good as a carnivore. I wasn't binge eating as a carnivore. I can eat sustainably that way. This is the life that I want, the lifestyle that I want. And it was easier because I was single at that point. So I just dove right in, and I was just feeling amazing. I started having hopes that I could even maybe get off my psoriasis medications that I'd been on for years, which is extremely important to the story, because one of the reasons my relationship ended was because my boyfriend at the time wanted to have kids, and I couldn't get pregnant on those medications because they're literally poison. I mean, you've got to communicate with your doctor and get off all of that and figure out next best steps if you want to get pregnant. And so that was one of the main reasons that I ended that relationship. But when I willingly chose to go carnivore and decided to do it forever, I started thinking maybe I could get off these medications and maybe my skin will stay clear. It's a lot of maybes and I don't knows, but I felt like it was definitely worth a try. So my first several months of carnivore went amazingly. I was losing weight slowly. I was feeling so incredible. I was documenting it all. I was making all these new carnivore friends. I was learning so much. It was just like a literal dream life for 4 to 6 months probably. And then nothing terrible happened, but I did start focusing on wanting to do everything I could to be able to get off my psoriasis medications. Okay, so I was following Dr. Annette Bosworth a lot at that point, and I was doing a very high-fat carnivore diet, trying to be in a lot of ketosis, thinking that would help me to sort of ramp up my immune system and get off my medications. And I can't say that it didn't do that. It very well might have, and it definitely gave me the courage to do it. So I finally stopped taking my medications for psoriasis in September of 2022. Okay, so now it's the very end of March of 24. So I've been off my medications for a year and a half. Okay, spoiler, my skin is incredible, but I want to circle back, okay? So got off all my medications. If that's all the carnivore diet ever did for me, that's still like miraculous. I'm so happy to be off my medications. I'm actually back with that same boyfriend that I was with before. That's kind of an interesting turn to the story, but we're back together now. We have been for a long time. I expect to marry him and, you know, have his babies. And I'm so happy I can do that. I'm so grateful to Carnivore for that. But around that time when I was doing the super high fat and I was, you know, trying to ramp up my immune system, some things started to turn a little bit then. I was not sleeping as well anymore. I started to very slowly gain weight. And so for the next 9 months or so into mid 2023, I hope I'm getting all these numbers right, I was just kind of slowly gaining weight. My skin's still good. I was excited to be off my medications, but sleeping was poor, weight was going up. Okay, so I was trying lots of different things. It's like at that point I was just chasing my tail as a carnivore. I wasn't just enjoying being a carnivore and living my life. I was constantly like, what if I do this and this? And what if I cut calories to this? And what if I increase fat to this? And what if I do protein? What if I eat sardines? Like, you know, all the things. And it got really complicated and weight kept going up and sleep just continued to be terrible. And when I say sleep was terrible, like I just couldn't sleep more than about 5 hours a night. I would wake up just alert, ready to go, which at first seemed great. Like I could just be so productive. But after a while, it's like I was just running on adrenaline and cortisol and I was just stressed all the time. So here's maybe where you started following me, because I documented all of this. You can go back and hear about it all, mostly on YouTube, also on Instagram, but it's hard to find stuff on there. In the summer of 2023, late summer, is when I was like, you know what? Carnivore has done so much for me. It basically also it's cured my binge eating. I didn't binge the whole basically year and a half that I was a strict carnivore. But I think it's maybe not serving me the best now. And I've got to figure out how to sleep better and figure something out to be able to lose some weight. And I truly thought that adding a little bit of carbs in, a little bit of plant foods, loosening up the reins just a little bit would be what I needed. Now, as I added things and trialed and errored, again, I documented it all. You can go back and watch videos about it, but I struggled a lot. And the main thing I struggled with was binge eating. It's like my binge eating just completely came back. And certainly I'm not saying it's because of the carnivore diet, because I was a binge eater before I ever knew what the carnivore diet was, almost before it ever existed, although it does go back a ways. So it probably did exist, just probably wasn't called that yet. But anyway, so the binging came back. So obviously that wasn't good for my weight. I was noticing my sleep was improving though. So here's where I'm going to really gloss over things, because I don't want this to take 10 million more years. But basically over the next 4 to 6 months or so, from mid 2023 to the end of 2023, around Christmas time, that's when I realized I do think that I need to be basically carnivore, though I need to figure out how to incorporate a little bit of carbs into my diet to help me sleep. And so what I've done and what I've discovered is that raw milk, 1 to 2 cups a day, especially 1 cup before bed, like an hour before bed, really helps me sleep. It helps to keep my blood sugar up, which I actually track it with a glucose monitor. So I know what my glucose was doing before, and it was dropping way low overnight. Now it's staying pretty steady. So that really helps me. And then I think the weight loss thing, while it is multifaceted, I think it's mostly that I was just eating too much. You know, I have a big appetite. Carnivore food is so freaking delicious. I can eat a lot. And so it's been hard to figure out how to keep my intake at a level where I can lose weight. I feel like I'm finally on a roll. Just for the last few weeks, I've been meal prepping, keeping my I'm saying calories because that's what I'm actually looking at, not macros. But if I'm eating carnivore foods, it's still going to be high in protein and fat, right? Like it's very low carb. Basically, the only carbs I'm getting are from milk. So I'm keeping calories at around 1,800, which I figured up all the equations, like my basal metabolic rate, the amount of calories I burn just to be alive. It's about 1,550 calories. And then I'm also pretty active. I burn probably about 700 calories a day between my job as a physical therapist, exercise, just being active, okay? So I've chosen 1,800-ish calories, also with the help of my friend Lily Kane. She encouraged me to do that too. So that's where I am now. So basically every day my calories are between about 1,800 and 1,850. I do have to sometimes think about fat a little bit, just if I'm starting to get a little constipated, which I can now on a lower calorie carnivore diet. That was never a problem when I just ate whatever I wanted because I was getting so much fat. But now sometimes I'm only getting like 100 grams of fat a day, which to any standard American diet eater, that's a ton. That's way too much fat. But to a carnivore, it's pretty low. So sometimes I'm purposely eating things with more fat so I can eat more like 130, 150 grams a day to keep myself more regular, okay? So I do have to be careful and tweak things and sort of trial and error still, but I feel like I'm finally in a good place, okay, where I'm sleeping pretty well. It's not perfect every night. It's not, but I'm sleeping pretty well, way better than I was when it was bad. I'm keeping out of super deep levels of ketosis, but getting into some ketosis. I am nourishing my body, eating 3 meals a day. Believe me, I've tried fasting. I've tried a bunch of things. I'm totally willing to hear recommendations, but I've probably tried whatever the thing is. This seems to be what's working for me. So I get to plan out on one day, a rational brain day. I'm planning out my food, prepping it all, figuring out the calories and the macros and all that, putting it in my Cronometer app, all of those things. And so then, down the week as I'm eating the food, maybe I'm like, I'm just really hungry today. In the past, I would be like, okay, I'll just have a ribeye today because I'm really hungry today. I need to listen to my body signals. But it's like, I can't make sound decisions about food. Like my decision maker is broken still, probably because I was a binge eater for 20 years, 25 years. So I can't trust myself to make decisions around food in real time. But when I'm making those decisions in one day a week with a rational mind, and then just following up on those decisions, not having to make new decisions throughout the week, it just really helps me. I think I can come up with a better way to explain that, and so maybe I'll do that in a future video, but I hope that kind of makes sense, why this has been so helpful for me. So my weight is finally going down, steadily going down, but not at the risk of like binging it all back up. And I just feel like I'm in a really, really good place right now. Obviously, we'll have to check back in because I've tried things before that at first seemed really great and then weren't so great. And maybe I'll have to change this in the future. I mean, things change, we have to make accommodations to those changes. And so I'm not gonna say that this is the end all be all, but this is where I am now and I'm feeling really good. So that was like a 20-minute summary. Oh my gosh, I really meant for that to be like 5 minutes. But I think it's useful to do this from time to time because sometimes people maybe accidentally present their story as a carnivore as it was just so easy and breezy and I did it and everything was perfect. And maybe it was, but that has not been my case. And I think it's so many other people's not their case either. So I just want to share the ups and downs and also some of the things I've learned along the way and just help you understand that it's not necessarily easy. Sometimes it's really hard, but it's worth it for sure, especially if it means you're getting healthier, you're getting off medicines, you can have the baby that you always wanted. I mean, whatever the thing is, it's so worth it. And I'm honestly so glad to have this compass inside of me that if I do something wrong, I can't sleep, my skin looks terrible, whatever, it's nice to be able to have that immediate feedback to make changes before it's something like, oh, I have a tumor that's been growing for 20 years that I never knew about, So anyway, I'm gonna stop now, but I am just really happy to get to have a platform to share this story. And I would love to hear any comments you have, anything that maybe you recognize in my story, any feedback you have for me, anything you want to share that you're struggling with or that you've overcome. I just love hearing all of that stuff. So thank you in advance for watching all this, and we will get back to the jerky. I've had my jerky going for about 4 hours and 15 minutes. I know that because my countdown from 6 hours, which will show up here in a moment, shows 1 hour 46 minutes left. But it looks done to me, so I'm gonna take it out and see. Yeah, it looks pretty good. It does kind of stick to the tray, so I'll remember that for next time. Might spray it. I don't know, it comes off pretty easily. It's not too bad. And it's actually not near as dirty as I was expecting it as far as what's sticking to the little grates there. But yeah, this is how I like it. A little bit flimsy, but nice and dry. And then of course with all that delicious fat on it. So the first thing I'm gonna do is take it all out and weigh it so I can see how much all the jerky weighs. Now, a correction of that I kept messing up before is it was about 60 ounces before, 59 and a half. So it was right, just a little under 4 pounds. I think I'll just take all this out and put it on a plate. You can see a little fat dripping. So I'm glad I put that piece of plastic in the bottom to catch that. So as you can see, my jerky has quite a bit of fat on it and it's a little oily. Again, that's how I like it, but that means that it wouldn't last very long. Like, you can store jerky for a long time in a closed container, airtight container, but with all this fat on it, I'm gonna treat it as if it were just meat, basically. So if I'm gonna eat it within a few days, I'll have it in the fridge. And if it's gonna be more than that, then I'll keep it in the freezer until it's close to being ready to be eaten. .31¼ ounces. So I'll have to figure out how much that is, like what the ratio is, and then keep that in mind when I'm tracking the calories for this. Now, as far as the dehydrator, I am very pleased. I need to, I guess, just take out the racks and give them a little rinse. And then it looks like there's just a little bit of drippings down there on that plastic tray, so I'll clean that off. But this definitely met and exceeded my expectations. It only took a little over 4 hours, which actually takes longer in my plastic dehydrator, and the cleanup is going to be way easier. And again, I just love that it's the stainless steel trays. Okay, I said I wasn't going to be taste testing any of this because I know it's dangerous for me, but I did just have a tiny bite to see about the salt content, and I would like a little bit more salt, so I'm going to add some now while it's still kind of warm and wet from the fat, basically. And then I'll let them cool with salt on them, and then I'll pack them up for their meal prep portions later. While I salt these, let's discuss what is, in retrospect, a very obvious reason for me of why it's been hard for me to lose weight as a carnivore. I mean, I'm getting on track now that I'm meal prepping and paying attention, really close attention to what I'm doing. But about a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago, I don't know, I was on a hiking trip with some girlfriends, and I mean, we were very active. We were hiking every day, so obviously I could handle more calories than normal. But I was eating what I had measured out to be 8 ounces of jerky as a snack every day. So now I know that would have been more like a pound of brisket I was eating every day as a snack. Okay, it's not like I was eating that as a meal. It was a snack. That's over 1,000 calories. So, you know, I was burning extra calories, but probably not 1,000 extra calories. So it's just, it adds up fast with this kind of food, especially my choices of carnivore food are generally pretty high fat and just very, very calorie dense. Okay, not bad. I think we'll let that sit probably for an hour or so until it's completely cooled, and then I'll pack it up in an airtight container, store it in the fridge overnight, and then divvy it up tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me today. I had the best time making jerky. Of course, I'm gonna love eating it. I'm super pleased with this new dehydrator. Thank you, London, for making one with stainless steel trays, and it's not even that hard to clean. I'm just beyond pleased with it, so thank you so much. If anyone's interested in the dehydrator or anything I used today, I will link all of that stuff in the caption. Feel free to ask me questions about it. I'll try to answer those. But basically, I just want to say thank you for sticking around. I love getting to interact with you guys, whether it's on Instagram or here in the comments or email, whatever. So thank you so much for everything. If you enjoyed this, I'd love it if you'd like and subscribe, and catch me on Instagram where we can connect even more often.